for Dr. Carl Jung. And he felt that whatever this intelligence was didn't fit into our ordinary concepts of hallucinations, but that it had access to the human collective unconscious. And then if you combine that with what Dr. Jacques Vallée concluded, that it's a control mechanism for the human consciousness, that it manipulates human consciousness in strange ways. And then John Keel coming in saying that it's not extraterrestrial, it's ultra-terrestrial, it may even be indigenous to this planet in the realm of the superspectrum that's normally invisible to us, but it has access to thoughts and imagery inside the human mind. For example, in 1897, the great airship mystery, the dirigible sightings that they were seeing before dirigibles were even invented or commonly flying. And they would typically introduce themselves. The occupants of the dirigibles were typically like bearded men that would say that they were working for a great inventor that's going to release the information about his invention to the public soon. Of course, he never did. And so here we've got a case where access to the collective human unconscious was available to this intelligence, and it created imagery that appeared to be physical objects or may even have been temporary physical objects of dirigibles all over the United States and in England and in other countries in 1897. And strangely, a young man in a hospital in 1896 was reading the newspaper reports of this and wrote War of the Worlds. It was H.G. Wells. He was 17 years old. So through science fiction, through art, through music, through things that we normally think of as things that we're making up ourselves, this imagery is constructed and projected in front of us in a way that seems to be a material object that simply vanishes. So we were talking earlier, too, about the different morphology of the sightings themselves, from the old clunky tin cans that the people in the 50s were seeing. That was their concept of what an extraterrestrial would be flying around in. But now they've really morphed into something really strange. The Mexican people call them Ibanis, and they look to the skeptics like groups of balloons, but they're not balloons. There's a fellow that I made Facebook friends with, Jeff Woolwine. He's written a book on Amazon about the Native American culture actually had petroglyphs in rock and stone and trees about these objects that he's perceiving as biblical entities, that they're actual intelligent entities that he's, for some reason, able to interact with, just like Dorothy Isaac or Antonio Urzi or any number of other people. Ted Owens seem to have some special connection with this intelligence behind the UFO phenomenon, at least one aspect of it, and are able to manipulate events and do all kinds of capture them on film and do strange things with it. So Neil deGrasse Tyson said it really succinctly once. He said, aliens could be here right now, and we might be too stupid to recognize it. And that's exactly the case. I study my two dogs quite a bit, and they're just like me. They have the same thing in them, spirit-wise, as I do, but they're operating through a different perceptual apparatus, a different brain and a different body. And one time at a fair, we got one of these little barking dogs, and it thought it was a real dog. Mm-hmm. And that may be sort of like what the intelligence behind the UFO phenomenon is doing to us, is presenting images that we can relate to, when in actuality, it's way beyond anything we can even conceive of. And we may even need increased intelligence through the production of our own technology as we approach the singularity to increase the human intelligence level and expand the spectrum of human perceptions to where we could finally understand who our visitors really are.
Mm. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing. I mean, and that kind of comes back to the topic of the show in some regards, which is this space religions and understanding some different things. And part of, I guess, what I find fascinating about it is the cult aspects that have been put onto these religions. Now, mm-hmm. in some regards, it seems to me, certain, I mean, I don't know how to say it. Some it was said to me a long time ago, the difference between a religion and a cult is political power.
Well, that ties into the difference between a hallucination and a vision is how many people you can get to see it.
Yeah, I mean, and so I mean, and that's one of those things where you have to be really careful about it. But there are a lot of religions and so-called cults that believe in sort of off-world people who are the higher beings.
Yeah, the Mormon Church. If you look into the cosmology where they're destined to rule a planet, the Church of Scientology, founded by L. Ron Hubbard, a science fiction writer, they have an extensive, really strange sci-fi-esque cosmology about their belief structure. And Marshall Applewhite, there's a lot of people who latch on to this idea that there's different planes of existence, and they have their own methodology on how to arrive at the next level for humanity. And Marshall Applewhite, who was with the founder of the Heaven's Gate call, as we all know, that ended in tragedy in 1997 when they took poison, and it happened to be coincidental to the appearance of the Hale-Bopp comet. Mm-hmm. And members of this particular cult, the Heaven's Gate cult, run by Marshall Applewhite, thought that there was a flying saucer trailing the Hale-Bopp comet, and that by exiting their vehicles voluntarily, that they would be on board the Orville, Mm-hmm. And the strange thing about that was in March 97, that's when the Phoenix Lights started at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon in counties surrounding Phoenix, Arizona, and culminated in a huge sighting seen by thousands at 8 o'clock. Among them, Fife Symington, the former governor of Arizona, who lampooned it at first because he thought that's what everybody wanted him to do. And then after he wasn't governor anymore, he admitted that it was an otherworldly craft that he saw. He's a pilot, so he ought to know. And then the military somehow knew what was going on because 2 hours later at 10 o'clock, they sent